Hannah Kim sat in the back corner of the lecture hall, her fingers moving quietly across her tablet as Professor Hyan explained shield harmonics. She had already finished the assignment 3 days ago, so now she worked on her own projects, improving engine efficiency calculations that nobody would ever see. The other students barely noticed her. They never did. "Miss Kim, are you paying attention?" Professor Hyan's voice cut through the room. Hannah looked up, startled. Everyone turned to stare at her. She felt her face grow warm. "Yes, Professor." "Then perhaps you can explain why the new destroyer class uses layered graviton shields instead of single-field projection." Hannah hesitated. She knew the answer. She always knew the answer. But speaking up meant drawing attention, and attention meant people like Jinwoo Park would mock her later. Still, the professor was waiting. "The layered system distributes impact force across multiple frequencies," she said quietly. "It prevents cascade failure if one layer is breached. But there's a harmonic issue between layers 3 and 5 that creates a resonance gap every 47 seconds. The classroom went silent. Professor Hyan raised his eyebrows. "That's correct. The first part, at least. Where did you hear about a resonance gap?" "I work at the Bizen shipyard," Hannah said. "I saw it during maintenance checks last week. The shields dropped to 73% efficiency during the gap. It happened so fast that most sensors don't catch it." Professor Hyan frowned. "Did you report this?" "My supervisor said I was reading the instruments wrong." Before the professor could respond, Jinwoo turned in his seat and smirked. "Maybe you were. You're good with books, Kim, but real engineering is different." Several students laughed. Mina Lee, sitting in the front row, didn't even glance back. She was too busy taking notes to care about the quiet girl who worked at a shipyard. Hannah said nothing. She looked down at her tablet and let her hair fall across her face. It was easier to be invisible. After class, her only friend Yuna caught up with her in the hallway. "You should have said something back to Jinwoo. He's such a jerk." "It doesn't matter," Hannah replied, heading toward the transit station. She had a shift at the shipyard in 2 hours. "It does matter. You're brilliant, Hannah. Everyone would see it if you just spoke up more." Hannah smiled softly, but didn't argue. Yuna meant well, but she didn't understand. Speaking up only made things worse. Better to keep your head down, do your work, and go unnoticed. The shipyard was loud and smelled like hot metal and ozone. Hannah clocked in and grabbed her toolkit, heading to Bay 7, where the new destroyers were being fitted. She moved between the massive ships like a ghost, checking systems and running diagnostics that the senior engineers would review later. They rarely credited her work, but she didn't mind. The ships needed to be perfect. People's lives depended on it. That night, she found the problem again. The shield harmonics were definitely wrong. She ran the numbers 4 times to be sure, then filed another report with her supervisor. He glanced at it and shook his head. "Kim, these ships passed every inspection. Stop looking for problems that aren't there." "But sir, if I'm right and the shields fail during combat, you're not right. You're a part-time college student, not a lead engineer. Stick to your job." Hannah walked home through the neon-lit streets of New Seoul, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Her apartment was small and empty. No family waited for her. Her parents had died in a transport crash when she was 15, leaving her alone with scholarships and part-time work to survive. She ate instant noodles at her tiny kitchen counter and tried not to think about the shield, flaw that nobody believed existed. 3 days later, everything changed. The news came during morning class. Professor Hyan's tablet buzzed, then every student's tablet buzzed simultaneously. An emergency broadcast appeared on every screen in the building. A collection of alien species called the Velthran Concordat had sent Earth an ultimatum. surrender most of their resources, and accept alien control or be destroyed. Humanity had refused. War had been declared. The students sat in shocked silence. Jin Woo's face had gone pale. Mina's hands trembled. Even Tai Ho Choi, who always acted tough, looked scared. The Velthran Concordat controlled hundreds of worlds. They had technology that made Earth's weapons look like toys. Everyone knew what this meant. Within hours, the conscription orders came. Every student at New Seoul Academy was being drafted into support roles. They would take aptitude tests and be assigned where humanity needed them most. Hana packed her few belongings in a daze, trying to process that the world was ending. The tests took 2 days. Physical evaluations, psychological profiles, technical assessments. Hana moved through them mechanically, answering questions and solving problems without really thinking. What did any of it matter if Earth was about to be destroyed? Then came the first battle. The human fleet engaged Velthran forces near Jupiter. Humanity sent everything they had, dozens of ships including 3 of the new destroyers that Hana had worked on. People gathered around screens everywhere, watching the battle unfold, praying for a miracle. The miracle never came. The Velthran weapons tore through human ships like paper. But what nobody expected was how the destroyers died. During combat, their shields flickered, dropping for less than a second. In that tiny gap, Velthran weapons punched through and destroyed all 3 ships in minutes. 15,000 people died before the fleet retreated in chaos. Hana watched the footage and felt sick. She had been right. The harmonic gap was real, and now thousands were dead because nobody had listened to her. She ran to the bathroom and threw up, tears streaming down her face. The next morning, her orders came. Emergency protocols had activated. New aptitude tests had been processed by military computers, analyzing everyone's scores. Most students were being sent to logistics and support units. Jinwoo was going to frontline infantry, Mina to supply coordination, Taiho to fighter training. Hana stared at her assignment in disbelief. She had been assigned to Admiral Do-Yoon Kang's Tactical Operations Center on the Moon Orbital Station. Her test scores had been flagged as exceptional. They needed her analytical mind. She packed her bag with shaking hands. The invisible girl was being sent to the center of the war. Everything was about to change, and she had no idea if she would survive long enough to matter. The Moon Orbital Station was massive, a spinning wheel of metal and lights hanging above the lunar surface. Hana pressed her face against the transport window as they approached, watching Earth glow blue and white in the distance. It looked so peaceful from here. Nobody would guess that humanity was fighting for survival. Forward Operating Base Station bustled with activity. Soldiers rushed through corridors. Officers shouted orders, and warning sirens blared every few hours. Hana clutched her bag and followed the directions to the Tactical Operations Center, feeling completely out of place. Everyone around her looked confident and strong. She was just a college student who worked in a shipyard. The operations center was a huge room, filled with holographic displays and dozens of people working at stations. Admiral Do-Yoon Kang stood at the center, a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. He glanced at Hana when she entered, his expression unreadable. "You're Kim?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Your test scores say you're some kind of genius." "Are you?" Hana didn't know how to answer that. "I'm good with patterns and systems, sir." "We'll see." Station 7. Start analyzing the Titan engagement data. I want a report in 6 hours. He turned away before she could respond. Hana found Station 7 and sat down, surrounded by career military analysts who looked at her like she was a child. Nobody spoke to her. She pulled up the battle data from the fight near Titan and started working, losing herself in numbers and tactical movements. It was easier than thinking about how scared she was. The Battle of Titan's Shadow had been a disaster. The Velthrin forces had predicted every move the human fleet made. Every time human ships tried to flank, the enemy was already repositioning. Every ambush was countered before it happened. It was like the Velthrins could see the future. Hana studied the data for hours, watching the battle replay over and over. The Velthrins weren't faster or more aggressive. They were just always in the right place at the right time. How were they doing it? She pulled up the communication logs next, cross-referencing them with enemy movements. A pattern began to emerge. Every time a human commander issued orders through encrypted channels, the Velthrin response came exactly 7 seconds later. 7 seconds. Always 7 seconds. Her hands started shaking as she ran the calculations again. They weren't predicting anything. They were reading the encrypted communications. Somehow the Velthrins had cracked humanity's military codes and were listening to every order before it was executed. That 7-second delay was the time it took to intercept, decode, and respond. Hana wrote her report and submitted it to Admiral Do-Yun. Then she sat back and waited, expecting nothing. Why would anyone listen to her? They never did. 2 hours later, the Admiral called her to his office. He looked at her with those hard eyes and held up her report. "Explain this." Hana swallowed. "They're reading our communications, sir, not predicting. The pattern is consistent across every engagement. 7 seconds between our orders and their counter-movements. If you're right, every tactical plan we have is useless." "Yes, sir." Admiral Do-Yun was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What's your solution?" Hana blinked. "Sir, you found the problem. How do we fix it?" Nobody had ever asked her that before. Her mind raced. We need communications they can't decode. But changing encryption takes time we don't have. Instead, we could use analog signals combined with chaos mathematics. Send false plans through digital channels and real orders through methods they can't intercept. Radio bursts, light signals, even physical couriers. Make the real pattern impossible to predict. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. "I'm sending a strike force to hit a Velthrin supply depot tomorrow. Small operation, 12 ships. You'll coordinate communications using your system. If it fails, those crews die. If it works, maybe we have a chance." Hana felt her stomach drop. "Sir, I'm not qualified. You are now. Dismissed." The next 30 hours were a nightmare. Hana designed the entire communication system from scratch, teaching the strike force crews how to use light pulses and prearranged codes. She barely slept, running simulations over and over, terrified of making a mistake. The crews looked at her with doubt. She was just a kid. How could they trust her with their lives? The strike launched at 0600 hours. Hana sat at her station, coordinating 12 ships as they moved through asteroid fields toward the Velthrin depot. Her hands shook as she sent light pulse signals that the enemy couldn't intercept. The Velthrins reacted to the false digital orders, moving their defense fleet exactly where Hana predicted they would go. The human strike force hit the depot from an unexpected angle. The Velthrins scrambled to respond, but they were confused and disorganized. For the first time since the war began, humanity had the element of surprise. The depot was destroyed. All 12 human ships made it home. Admiral Do-Yun called her to his office again. This time, he almost smiled. "Good work, Kim. Really good work." Word spread fast. The quiet girl from Station 7 had given humanity its first real victory. Some of the analysts started treating her differently, asking her opinion on things. It felt strange and uncomfortable. Hana still wanted the invisible, but the war wouldn't let her. Yuna sent a message from her hospital ship, proud and excited. Hana heard that Jingwu's infantry unit had been hit hard in a ground battle. Most of his squad was dead. Survivors were being pulled back to the moon base. She felt bad for him, even after how he'd treated her. Lieutenant Chun Ho Nam arrived at the base a week later. He was a special forces officer, covered in scars, with eyes that had seen too much. He found Hana in the operations center and sat down next to her without asking. "You're the one who figured out the communication thing," he said. "Yes, sir. Smart. We need more people who think like you." He watched her work for a moment. "You scared?" Hana nodded. There was no point lying. "Good. Scared people stay alert. Just don't let it freeze you." He stood up and walked away, leaving Hana wondering why he'd bothered talking to her at all. 3 days later, the alarms went off. Every screen in the base turned red. A Velthrin riftbreaker had appeared in Earth's orbit. The room went silent as everyone stared at the tactical display. Riftbreakers were massive ships that could tear holes in spacetime itself, bypassing every defense humanity had built. Admiral Do-yoon's voice cut through the silence. "It's charging weapons. Impact on Earth in 72 hours. Someone whispered, "Can we stop it? We've thrown everything at these ships before. Nothing works. The gravitational shield is too strong." Hana stared at the display, her mind racing. 72 hours. 3 days to save 8 billion people. Every conventional weapon had failed. The riftbreaker sat in orbit like a death sentence, untouchable and inevitable. She pulled up every scan they had of riftbreaker technology and started analyzing. There had to be something. Some weakness. Some flaw. She just had to find it before Earth died. Hannah hadn't slept in 48 hours. Her eyes burned and her hands trembled as she ran simulation after simulation. Coffee cups littered her station. Other analysts had given up and were saying goodbye to their families. Earth had no way to evacuate 8 billion people. When the riftbreaker fired, everyone would die. The gravitational shield surrounding the enemy ship was perfect. Every weapon humanity fired either curved around it or was crushed before impact. Missiles, railguns, plasma torpedoes, nothing worked. The Velthrins had created something unbeatable. But Hana kept searching. She pulled up data on human ship drives, studying how they manipulated gravity to move through space. When a drive overloaded, it created a specific gravimetric frequency before exploding. She'd seen it happen during maintenance at the shipyard. The pattern was always the same. What if that pattern could be weaponized? She ran calculations through the night, her mind working faster than it ever had. If 30 ships overloaded their drives simultaneously in the right positions around the riftbreaker, their combined gravitational frequencies might create a harmonic resonance. Like hitting a wine glass with the perfect note, the resonance could shatter the shield, but the timing had to be perfect. Exactly perfect. And the shield would only collapse for 4.7 seconds before rebuilding. One shot. That's all humanity would get. The worst part was what it meant for the crews. They would have to stay with their ships until the final moment of detonation. The escape pods wouldn't clear the blast radius in time. 30 ships. Over 300 people. Dead for a chance that might not even work. Hana's hands shook as she wrote up the plan. She checked the math 5 times, then 10 times, then 20 times. The numbers were right, but the cost was horrifying. How could she ask people to die based on her calculations? What if she was wrong? She submitted the plan to Admiral Do-yoon at hour 64. 8 hours left before Earth died. The Admiral read it in silence. When he looked up, his face was grim. "This is suicide for those crews." "Yes, sir. If the shield doesn't collapse, we lose 30 ships and Earth still dies." "Yes, sir. But if we do nothing, Earth definitely dies." Hannah nodded, unable to speak. The weight of what she was proposing crushed down on her chest. 300 lives for 8 billion. The math was simple. The reality was unbearable. Admiral Do-yun stood up. I'll call for volunteers. Get to the operations center and prepare to coordinate this thing. An hour later, the Admiral addressed every available crew in the fleet. He explained the plan in simple terms. 30 ships needed to overload their drives in perfect synchronization around the rift breaker. The crews would not survive. He asked for volunteers. Hundreds of hands went up. Pilots and engineers stepped forward without hesitation. Some were crying. Some looked terrified. But they all volunteered anyway because Earth was their home and their families were down there, and someone had to try. Jinwoo Park was among them. He'd been recovering from injuries in the medical wing, but checked himself out early. His face was pale, and his hands were bandaged, but his eyes were clear. When he saw Hana in the operations center, he walked over to her station. "Kim," he said quietly, "I was wrong about you. In class, I mean. You're the smartest person I've ever met." Hana felt tears burning in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you have to do this. Don't be. Someone has to, and I'm glad it's me." He tried to smile. "Just make sure the timing is perfect, okay? Make my death count." Taiho Choi volunteered his entire fighter squadron to protect the 30 ships from Velthrin interceptors. He looked different now, harder and quieter than the arrogant pilot trainee from school. War had changed all of them. The final 8 hours moved too fast. Hana coordinated the positioning of 30 ships, calculating trajectories down to the centimeter. Each crew received their exact coordinates and timing windows. She ran practice drills with them over and over, her voice becoming hoarse from talking them through the sequences. She learned their names, listened to them joke nervously over the comms, heard them record final messages for their families. Every voice burned into her memory dot when the hour arrived. Hana sat at her station, surrounded by officers and analysts, all watching the tactical display in silence. 30 ships moved into position around the rift breaker like points on a sphere. Velthrin fighters launched to disrupt them, and Taiho's squadron engaged immediately. "All ships report status," Hana said into her headset, surprised her voice was steady. 30 voices responded. "All green." Already the Velthrin fighters swarmed desperately. Taiho's squadron was taking heavy casualties but holding the line. On the tactical display, Hana watched blue icons wink out one after another as human fighters died buying time. "Ship 17, your navigation is damaged," Hana reported, watching the data stream. It was Jinwoo's ship. "I know. Systems are failing." His voice was calm. "Too calm. Can you hold position?" "I'll hold it. Just tell me when." The rift breaker began charging its main weapon. Earth had minutes left. Hana started the countdown, her voice carrying to 30 ships. 300 people who were about to die because of her plan. 60 seconds. All ships confirm overload sequences are initialized. 30 confirmations. Jinwoo was piloting manually now, using verbal corrections from Hana to stay in position as his systems failed around him. 30 seconds. Begin drive overload on my mark. The tactical display showed Velthrin fighters breaking through Taiho's line. 2 were heading straight for Ship 23. "Ship 23, you have incoming," the ship exploded. 29 ships left. The calculations would still work if the others adjusted spacing. Hana fed new coordinates to the surviving crews. 10 seconds. Hold positions. She could hear people breathing over the comms. Some praying, some silent. Jinwoo was still making jokes, his voice shaking. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. 30 drive systems overloaded simultaneously. Well, 29. The gravimetric frequencies combined, spreading out from each ship in invisible waves. The waves met at the center, at the Riftbreaker's shield, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the shield shattered like glass. All fleet units, fire everything. Admiral Do-yoon's voice boomed. Every remaining human ship in range opened fire. Railgun rounds, missiles, plasma torpedoes, everything humanity had left. The weapons struck the Riftbreaker's bare hull and tore it apart. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface. The massive ship began breaking up, venting atmosphere and debris. Emergency transports now. Hana screamed into her headset. Get out! Some crews managed to activate emergency transports in that last microsecond before their ships exploded. Blue flashes appeared on the tactical display as people materialized on nearby ships. 12 transports successful. 17 failed. Jingwoo's voice came through one last time. Hey, Kim, we did it. Tell my family. The transmission cut off. Ship 17 exploded with the others. A brief flash of light that took Jingwoo and his crew. On the tactical display, over 100 blue icons vanished. Taiho's squadron was gone too, consumed by Velthrin fire, but the Riftbreaker was destroyed. Earth was safe. The operation center erupted in cheers. People hugged each other and cried with relief. Admiral Do-yoon stood at the center of it all, watching Earth on the main display. Alive and whole. Hannah sat at her station and shook. She'd saved 8 billion people, but she couldn't forget the voices of the 300 who died following her calculations. Jinwoo's last words kept echoing in her head. They'd won, but the victory felt hollow and dark. The celebration lasted less than an hour. Then an encrypted message arrived from Velthrin Command. It wasn't a surrender. It was a threat. They were sending the Harvester Fleet, led by Supreme Commander Valonis himself. It was their most powerful armada, a force that had destroyed entire civilizations. Arrival time, 6 weeks. Admiral Do-yoon read the message aloud. The room fell silent. Earth's military was shattered. Their best crews were dead. Supplies were nearly gone. Morale was collapsing. Hana stared at her screen and felt something change inside her. The invisible girl who wanted to hide was gone. 300 people had trusted her and died bravely. She couldn't let that be for nothing. If humanity was going to die, she would make sure they went down fighting. She pulled up battle records and started working. 6 weeks to find a way to beat an unbeatable fleet. The math didn't look good, but math wasn't everything. Humans were unpredictable. Maybe that was enough. They promoted Hana to Chief Tactical Analyst 3 days after the Riftbreaker battle. She was 19 years old and suddenly responsible for planning humanity's defense against an armada that had never lost. Officers who'd once ignored her now waited for her orders. It should have felt good, but instead she felt crushed under the weight of it. The nightmares started immediately. Every night she heard Jinwoo's voice cutting off mid-sentence. Saw Taiho's squadron vanish from the tactical display. Counted the 17 transport signatures that never appeared. She'd wake up gasping, unable to remember if she'd saved Earth or murdered 300 people. Admiral Do-yoon found her in the operations center at 03:001 morning, staring at battle reports. He sat down next to her without speaking for a long time. You did the right thing, he finally said. Did I? 300 people are dead because of me. 8 billion people are alive because of you. That's command, Kim. You make impossible choices and carry the weight of them. If you can't handle that, tell me now. Hannah thought about quitting, going back to being invisible, letting someone else make the terrible decisions. But Jinwoo had died trusting her calculations. Taiho had bought time with his life. She owed them more than running away. I can handle it, she said. Good, because we need you. Humanity's situation was desperate. The fleet was scattered and damaged. Production facilities, couldn't replace losses fast enough. Morale was collapsing as people realized the Harvester fleet was coming. Some colonies were already surrendering, hoping the Velthrons would spare them. Hannah spent weeks studying every recorded battle between the Velthrons and other species. The pattern was always the same. The Velthrons used overwhelming force and superior technology. They fought conventionally, expecting their enemies to do the same. Every species that faced them tried to match their strength and failed, but humans didn't have strength to match. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and running out of time. Conventional warfare would get them slaughtered. So Hannah started thinking unconventionally. She noticed something interesting in the old records. Humans were unpredictable in ways other species weren't. They took insane risks, adapted on the fly, fought dirty when necessary. The Velthrons kept expecting them to follow normal military doctrine, and humans kept doing unexpected things. What if they made a plan based entirely on that? Make the enemy fight the battle they expected, while humanity fought a completely different war. She called it the Echo Protocol. The idea was simple, but required perfect execution. Use every remaining large ship as a decoy, broadcasting false fleet signatures that made humanity look much stronger than they were. Meanwhile, retrofit small vessels with salvaged Velthron stealth technology. Create an invisible strike force that could infiltrate the Harvester fleet and sabotage it from within. It meant sending small teams behind enemy lines with almost no chance of extraction. It meant trusting untested technology. It meant gambling everything on chaos and surprise. Admiral Daoyun listened to her proposal and was quiet for a long time. "You're asking me to send people on a suicide mission. I'm asking you to let humanity fight like humans, instead of trying to be Velthrons. If this fails, we have nothing left. If we fight them conventionally, we've already lost." Admiral Daoyun approved the plan. Lieutenant Junho was put in charge of assembling the strike teams. He called them the Ghost Division and handpicked 200 operatives from Special Forces and desperate volunteers. When Jinwoo's name appeared on the survivor list, having barely escaped his exploding ship, he immediately volunteered. His hands still shook from his injuries, but his eyes were hard and determined. Mina Lee had become a logistics genius during the war, coordinating supply chains across 3 planets. She designed the entire supply system for the Ghost Division, making sure they'd have everything needed for the operation. When Hannah thanked her, Mina said quietly, "I should have been nicer to you in school. You were always smarter than any of us." Yuna used her communications training to create the false chatter for the decoy fleet. She made it sound like humanity had a massive armada preparing to defend Earth. The broadcasts were designed to be intercepted, making the Velthrons think they knew humanity's strategy. Hannah coordinated everything from the operations center. She designed battle plans for the conventional engagement while secretly preparing the sabotage operations. She barely slept, running on coffee and adrenaline, and the knowledge that failure meant extinction. Professor Hyan died 2 weeks before the Harvester fleet arrived. A Velthron raiding party hit his research station. They killed everyone there. Hannah received a message he'd recorded before the attack. His old voice was calm and steady. "Miss Kim, I wanted you to know you were the best student I never properly taught. I saw your potential, but never pushed you to show it. That was my failure, not yours. What you're doing now, saving all of us, that's who you really are. Be brave. Trust yourself. Humanity is lucky to have you." Hannah cried for an hour after watching it. Then she went back to work, because that's what Professor Hyan would have wanted. The Ghost Division launched 3 weeks before the Harvester fleet arrived. 200 people in tiny stealth ships slipped past Velthron patrol lines and began the dangerous work of infiltrating the Armada. They had to stay hidden for weeks, slowly working their way into key ships, planting viruses and sabotage programs. The waiting was agony. Every day without contact meant the operation was still proceeding. Every day also meant they could all be dead and nobody would know. Hana checked her screens obsessively, looking for any sign, any signal. Admiral Do-Yun found her at her station one night and put a hand on her shoulder. "You're a leader now, Kim. That means learning to trust your people to do their jobs while you do yours. What if I'm wrong? What if they all die for nothing? Then we die with them. But if you're right, humanity survives. Those are the stakes. That's always been the stakes." Slowly, carefully, reports started coming in through hidden channels. The Ghost Division was in position. 47 harvester vessels were compromised with viruses waiting to activate. Junho reported that Supreme Commander Valonis was paranoid and brutal, executing his own officers for small failures. The Velthrin command structure was rigid and inflexible, perfect for exploitation. Jin Wu sent a message directly to Hana. "We're ready here. Trust the plan. Trust us. We won't let you down." The decoy fleet assembled at Earth's outer defense perimeter, broadcasting loudly and proudly. Every large ship humanity had left took position, making it look like they were preparing for a grand conventional battle. The false communications chatter spoke of new weapons and defensive positions. All of it was designed to make the Velthrins overconfident. The Harvester fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 500 ships, the largest armada the Velthrins had ever assembled. Supreme Commander Valonis transmitted a message to Earth demanding immediate surrender. His voice was cold and arrogant. "You have fought bravely for an inferior species. But this ends now. Surrender or be destroyed. You have 1 hour." Admiral Do-Yun didn't respond. Instead, he looked at Hana. "Is the Ghost Division ready?" Hana checked her systems. 47 green indicators. All in position. All waiting for her signal. She took a deep breath and opened the fleet-wide channel. "All teams. Echo Protocol is live. Show them what humans do." Supreme Commander Valonis watched the human fleet positioning for battle and felt satisfaction. They were going to fight conventionally, trying to defend their world with courage and inadequate technology. It was almost admirable, but it was futile. The Harvester fleet would crush them within hours, and then Earth would surrender. Another primitive species added to the CONCORDAT. He gave the order to advance. 500 ships moved forward in perfect formation, ready to deliver the final blow to humanity's resistance. That's when everything went wrong. Across 47 of his ships, systems began failing simultaneously. Weapons misfired or shut down completely. Shields collapsed without warning. Navigation computers showed false data. Communications networks crashed into static. The viruses that the Ghost Division had carefully planted over 3 weeks all activated at once. Valonis screamed orders, but his fleet was deaf. Ships collided with each other or drifted out of formation. The perfect armada descended into chaos in minutes. That's when the decoy fleet stopped broadcasting. The massive signatures vanished, revealing the truth. There was no grand human armada, just a handful of damaged ships that had been bluffing the entire time. The real attack came from everywhere and nowhere. Small human strike forces emerged from asteroid fields, from behind gas giants, from inside the debris of old battles. They'd been hiding the entire time, waiting for the Ghost Division to create chaos. Humanity stopped fighting like Velthrins and started fighting like humans. Messy, unpredictable, desperate, brutal. They hit damaged ships and ran before reinforcements arrived. Used the Velthrins' rigid formations against them. Turned the mighty Harvester fleet into a confused mess of friendly fire and panic. UNHO single quotes S-Team infiltrated Valonis's flagship during the chaos. The Supreme Commander never saw them coming, Supreme Commander Valonis stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His perfect fleet was tearing itself apart. Ships reported ghost signals and false commands. Weapons fired on friendly vessels. The chaos made no sense. How could primitive humans do this? Then his flagship shuddered. Internal alarms blared. Security reported intruders on multiple decks. Impossible. His ship was the most secure vessel in the Concordat. Nobody could infiltrate it. Lieutenant Junho and his team moved through the corridors like shadows. They'd spent weeks studying Velthran ship layouts and security patterns. Now they exploited every weakness, moving toward the command center with deadly efficiency. Velthran guards fell before they could sound alarms. They reached the bridge and blew the doors. Valonis turned to face them, his alien features twisted in rage and confusion. "You're just humans. This cannot be." Junho raised his weapon. "You fought us like we were predictable. That was your mistake." The shot echoed through the bridge. Supreme Commander Valonis fell, dead before he hit the floor. Leaderless and in chaos, the Velthran command structure collapsed out from the Moon Base Operations Center. Hana watched the battle unfold on tactical displays. The Harvester fleet was breaking apart. Some ships tried to retreat, but ran into human ambush positions. Others surrendered immediately, their crews confused and demoralized. The unbeatable armada was being destroyed by a force a fraction of its size. Jinwu's team captured a Velthran command carrier intact. The crew surrendered without a fight once they realized their communications were jammed and their weapons offline. Jinwu sent a simple message back to base. "Target secured. We're coming home." Taiho's fighter squadron, rebuilt after his death at the Riftbreaker, eliminated what remained of the Harvester fleet's flagship after Junho's team disabled its shields. The massive ship broke apart in a series of brilliant explosions that lit up the darkness of Spacedot within 8 hours of the battle starting. It was over. The legendary Harvester fleet that had crushed dozens of civilizations was scattered and defeated. Humanity had won. The victory celebration was brief. Too many people had died. Too many ships were lost. But Earth was safe, and that was enough. Admiral Doyun stood before his exhausted staff and announced that the Velthran Concordat was requesting a ceasefire. "They want to negotiate," he said. "They've asked to speak with me." He looked across the operations center at Hana, who was slumped at her station, barely conscious after 3 days without sleep. "But I'm not the one they should be talking to." The Velthran delegation arrived 3 days later. 4 species, all proud warrior races who had dominated the galaxy for centuries. They entered the conference room, expecting to meet with humanity's military leadership. Instead, they found Hana sitting at the table in a maintenance jumpsuit, dark circles under her eyes, looking more like a tired student than a military genius. The lead Velthran representative stared at her. "You commanded the human forces?" "I planned the strategies," Hana said quietly. "You are the one called Kim?" "The tactical analyst." "Yes." The aliens exchanged looks. They'd come expecting a warrior king or a brutal general. Instead, they found a teenage girl who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. The representative sat down slowly. "We underestimated your species. You fight like the universe is ending." "For us, it was," Hana replied. "We had everything to lose." "You were just proving a point." Silence filled the room. The Velthran representative finally nodded. "We wish to negotiate a treaty. The Concordat will withdraw from human space, recognize your sovereignty, and agree to technology exchanges. We will not attack Earth again." "And the colonies that surrendered?" Admiral Doyun asked from his position by the wall. "Released." All human territories returned. The treaty was signed that day. The war was over. Humanity had survived against impossible odds. News of the victory spread across human space. People celebrated in the streets. The species that everyone thought would be destroyed had defeated the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Hana sat through the treaty signing in a daze. She kept thinking about Jinwoo's last transmission before the rift breaker, about Professor Haiyan's message, about the hundreds of voices she'd heard go silent during the war. They'd won, but the cost had been terrible. After the ceremony, she requested a transfer back to civilian service. Admiral Doyan tried to convince her to stay, offering her any position she wanted. But Hana was done. She'd saved humanity, and now she wanted to disappear again. 5 years passed. Hana lived on a quiet research station far from Earth, designing defensive systems for the fleet. She worked alone most of the time, which was how she liked it. The station was peaceful, and nobody bothered her much. She could lose herself in equations and engineering problems without thinking about war. Her story spread anyway. Across human space, people told the tale of the invisible girl who became humanity's greatest tactical mind. Military academies studied the Echo Protocol and taught about unconventional warfare. Children learned her name in school. Politicians tried to use her as a symbol. Hana refused all of it. She declined medals and honors, turned down interview requests, avoided public events. She just wanted to work and be left alone with her memories and her guilt. Other species learned about her too. In alien space stations and foreign military academies, instructors spoke about Kim Hana with respect and caution. The human who had defeated the Harvester fleet. The strategist who turned humanity's weaknesses into weapons. Her name became a warning. Never underestimate humans. Never assume you know how they'll fight. Jinwoo became an ambassador, traveling between human and alien worlds. He always credited Hana when people asked about the war. She taught me that being smart was more important than being strong. That courage meant accepting you might be wrong. I was a fool in school, and she saved my life anyway. Mena ran the largest logistics corporation in the solar system. She sent Hana messages every month, thanking her for the chance to prove herself during the war. Most of the messages went unanswered, but Mena kept sending them anyway. Taiho, who'd survived everything somehow, trained new fighter pilots. He told them stories about the Ghost Division and the Rift Breaker and the final battle. The greatest warrior I ever knew, he'd say, never fired a shot. She just understood how to make impossible things possible. Only Yuna visited regularly. She'd take a transport to the research station once a month and spend a few days with Hana. They'd talk about everything except the war. Yuna understood that her friend was still fighting battles in her mind, still hearing voices that had gone silent. "You saved us all," Yuna said during one visit. "I got a lot of people killed," Hana replied. "You gave them a reason to hope. That's not nothing." One evening, Hana sat alone in an observation deck, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance. It was blue and beautiful, and alive with 8 billion people who would never know her face. She thought about the girl she'd been, sitting in the back of class, hoping nobody would notice her. A young cadet approached nervously. He couldn't have been more than 17. "Excuse me? Are you Engineer Kim?" Hana looked up, startled. "Yes." "Are you the Hana Kim? From the war?" She wanted to say no, wanted to tell him he had the wrong person. But lying felt wrong. "I'm just an engineer who got lucky." The cadet's eyes went wide. "You're a legend. You saved Earth. You defeated the Harvester fleet. They teach us about you at the academy. They shouldn't. I'm not special." "Yes, you are. You proved humans could beat anyone if we were smart enough and brave enough. You're why I joined the fleet." Hana didn't know what to say to that. She looked back at Earth, thinking about all the faces she'd never forget. Jinwoo making jokes as his ship fell apart. Taiho holding the line. The 300 voices that had trusted her calculations. "No," she said quietly. "I'm just someone who refused to let us die quietly." The cadet stood there awkwardly for a moment, then saluted and walked away. Hannah sat alone again, staring out at the stars. The war was over, but she was still fighting it every day in her memories. Maybe she always would be, but Earth was safe. Humanity had survived. The species that everyone thought was too weak, too primitive, too chaotic had proven they deserved to exist among the stars. They'd done it through courage and sacrifice and impossible choices. And they'd done it because one quiet girl had refused to be. Invisible when it mattered most, the camera pulled back from the observation window, showing the research station against the backdrop of space. Ships moved in the distance, human and alien designs working together now. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, to fear their unpredictability, to recognize that underestimating them was a fatal mistake. The legend of Hannah Kim would be told for generations. The tactical genius who saved Earth, the strategist who defeated the unbeatable, the girl who turned humanity's weaknesses into their greatest strength. But Hannah herself would remain what she'd always wanted to be. Just an engineer. Just someone doing her job. Just a person who'd been in the right place at the right time and made the best choices she could with the information she had. The invisible girl had saved the world. Now she could be invisible again. And maybe, someday, that would be enough.